Hey guys, Rexisor here and welcome to Update Monday. That's right, I'm doing this on a Monday. It is the 27th of October 2025 and this video is mostly going to be Warhammer related because I am hot off the press from a Warhammer tournament that I was at over the weekend. An Old World tournament specifically. A lot of square bases and lots of fun. I haven't really been doing anything else. I have been playing games and stuff, but I'm just going to focus this mostly on the tournament in general. And what I've done was also, there's a fly. I know you just saw it on camera. Don't laugh at me. My wife is laughing at me. Anyway, whoa, what's this? A new scene? Crazy. I know, I'm crazy. Anyway, so it was the Welsh Open, Rise of Sylvania. It was a tournament over 2 days, over Saturday and Sunday, 25th, 26th. And it was a 5 games of 2,000 points. And it was capped at 64 tickets. There were 79 players. They did open up a bit more. It was one of the bigger tournaments of Old World, I think, to date. It's either the biggest or second biggest solely Old World tournament. There's been quite a few that have been like Old World and 40k, Age of Sigmar or whatever. But yeah. So it was a Firestorm and that was our schedule and stuff. So we played 3 games on the Saturday, 2 games on the Sunday. And then we had several limitations. So it was a 2,000 point list, which meant that there were a few restrictions for that, with no allies allowed, no renegades pack, combined arms and grand melee, which I'll explain lower down, and restriction on specifically the Grand Cathay, where you could only ever have 2 Sky Lanterns. And then we had to do all our things on new recruit, which I will show you momentarily what my list was and stuff. So the 2 restrictions on the list were Grand Melee and Combined Arms. You had to do both. So you can't spend more than 25% on a single character or unit, which meant that effectively any unit or character was capped at 500 points on the nose. And you could only ever include 1 level 4 wizard for the whole army and up to 2 level 3 wizards for the whole army. And any number of level 1 or 2s. So that was a big limitation there. And then Combined Arms restricted the amount of certain characters you could get. So for example, you can only have between 0 and 3 of the same character. So for vampire counts, for example, of which there were quite a few, you could only take 3 Banshees because you were limited to only ever taking up to 3, whereas before you could take as many as you wanted effectively, as long as you were within the restrictions of the army or restrictions of the 25%. So you can only spend 1,000 points on characters. Normal limitations. It doesn't matter. Let's not get too much into that. But yeah, so those are basically the 2 major restrictions that we had. So before I go into what we played, I'm going to show you my army and my... but you will see how I did, because that's just how it is. But I was playing Warriors of Chaos, which is my favourite faction at the moment, especially in Old World. I just really like how they play. And yeah, so I bought my shy of 500 point character, was a Exalted Champion on a Chaos Dragon. I gave him a shield and a great weapon. And then he had Mark of Nurgle, which meant if you roll to hit, you have to re-roll 6s against me, so that keeps me more alive, more or less. And most people, because of the high weapon skill of my Exalted Champion, would be needing 5s to hit, sometimes 4s. But basically 6 always re-rolling, so that was really good. And then I had the Talisman of Carrion Crow, which gives me regeneration 5+, and poisoned attacks, which didn't really come into effect, but it could have. And I got 3 times Favour of the Gods. This is because Chaos, every turn you roll on a chart, and that buffs up your character, sometimes permanently, sometimes temporary. And if you roll a 1, it makes you stupid. So I have 3 of these just in case I keep rolling 1s. Gotta say, I didn't roll 1 once the entire tournament, so little bit wasted points here, but I'd rather be certain because I roll 1s and it's annoying. Then I had a Sorcerer Lord. He was level 3. He had an Arcane Familiar, so even though he was level 3, he could have 4 spells, but I could only ever cast 3. He had 1 Favour of the Gods because I like rolling on the chart. It's fun. And then Diabolic Splendor meant that him and his unit, if he was attached to one, would be -1 to hit in shooting. I took the Demonology, which, looking back, probably not the best lore to pick, but you live, you learn. In my core, I had 2 units. I had the 5 Chaos Knights. They had Lance. They were also Mark of Nurgle, so once again reroll 6s to hit against them. They had Brazen Collar, which gives them a magic resistance of 2, so any people casting spells against that unit would be -2 to cast. And then Musician, which meant that, and a Champion, so no Standard Bearer, because I didn't think like I needed one, and that's more points. Then 314 of my 16 Chaos Warriors with Mark of Tzeentch. They had Shield, and then the Champion had a Brazen Collar, so once again, magic resistance 2. The Standard Bearer had an Icon of Darkness, which meant it's a -1 to hit in the shooting, so the idea being that these two together would be -2 to hit when shooting at this big block. And more importantly, Mark of Tzeentch meant that if I had a caster in the unit, and there were 10 or more warriors, which there are, you get +1 to cast. So level 3 usually gets +2. With this, it'll be +3. So that's a really big block that would meant basically is my wizard bunker. It's meant to do things to me. Then, very basic, 2 units of 3 Dragon Ogres with Great Weapon and a Champion. Very hard hitting, very powerful. They've got 4 wounds apiece, a 3-up save. They're toughness 4, so they're not difficult to wound, but still a challenge. And then they're strength 7 with the Great Weapon, which means I'm always wounding on 2s unless I come up against like a dragon, which I didn't, but that would basically mean I'd be wounding on 3s, which is very, very good. And then 2 Gigantic Spawns of Chaos, both being Gigantic Spawns of Nurgle, which means that they get poison attacks and a 5+ regeneration save. So, for those of you who are familiar with Warhammer but not so much with Old World, the way that saves work is that you have your normal armor save, and then if you fail that, you can use your ward save, and if you fail that, you then get your regeneration save. So in effect, my Lord had a 3+, 5+, 5+, my Spawns have a 5+, 5+, and then my Sorcerer has a 5+, 5+, because he has heavy armor and a 5+ ward inbuilt. Everyone else, that was a 3+ save, that was a 3+ save, and then these guys have a 3+ save. So overall, as you can probably see from my army, the entire point was just move up, kill things. And as you can see from my results down here, I've got 3 matches. The first was a draw, then quite a hefty loss, and then 2 reasonable wins. I say reasonable, this was my 4th game was more than unreasonable, but it was a big win. And then finally a quite major loss at the end there. So I went 2-1-2, which I'm very, very happy with. And that allowed me to, with all of my points added up, get to 38th overall with 50 points. So 38 out of 79, is over half. So very happy with how I did overall. But let's go into each match. So I went up against Owen Williams first, who was playing Skaven. I'm not going to go so much into the lists, but I am going to go back to these to show you what the actual maps and what the scenarios were. For those of you interested in the 20-0 system, this is how we did our tournament points, and it's based on the victory points difference between our scores. So the way that Warhammer works is kill points based. So if a unit is worth 500 points and you kill it, you get 500 points. And then you just tally up everything at the end. In addition, and this is something new for this tournament than previous tournament I've been to, we had secondary objectives, things like a baggage cart, objectives on the board, domination, and strategic locations. So I will go into them when we get to each scenario, but this tallies up to a certain points value, and depending on the point difference, that's how we determine the score. And then the score determines which is your next opponent, so on, so forth. So keep that in mind. That's where you'll see that 20-0 system and what the scores actually mean. So each game was 6 rounds long, and then there were TP penalties if you're being slow, of which there were actually quite a few. I didn't realize it until I was looking at the final scoring across the board, but quite a few people did take forever, did suffer that penalty, so it did actually come into effect. And I know that a lot of TOs sometimes don't do those kind of things, even if people are being slow, but yeah, it did come into effect. Anyway, the first game was The Haunting, where both of us got a free Banshee. So a Banshee is a Vampire Counts unit, which allows you to scream, which is a specific rule where you pick a unit within 8 inches. They have to take a leadership check at -2. For every number over that they roll, they take 1 wound, which they cannot save at all. It is very powerful. The Vampire Counts, there were quite a few players against them, and we will see. I went against one of them, and I'll just show you how they work when we get to it. But effectively, Vampire Counts build around this because it's a really powerful ability. So in the first game, everyone was allowed to try it out, and for me, it didn't really do anything. The actual deployment was just a very basic Dawn of War style, for those who know 40k, where you deploy 12 inches on your side of the board edge, with a gap of 24 between the two, and the stars are where the strategic locations were played. So these are objectives where at the end of every player turn, if you control an objective, you score 30 victory points, and this tallies at the end of every turn for a potential of 30 times 12, which is 360. More than that, well, per objective. But yeah, so quite simple. And then finally, baggage train. I made my own baggage train, and my wife painted it. And effectively, that is a immovable object where you can destroy it if you end up in range of the baggage train. You go in base contact. If you're there from when you move into it until the start of your next turn, it gets destroyed. That's 250 points, so quite a lot. And then if you protect yours and hold it at the end, you get 100. So with that, 10-10 draw on that battle against Owen Williams with Skaven. Very quickly show you the list, which shows up really nicely over here. I'm actually going to check on OBS to make sure it shows up nicely. It does indeed. We've got a Greyskeer on a Screaming Bell, also Demonology, and then 2 Magic Missiles. A Skaven Chieftain with Shield, Heavy Armor, the Battlestar Bearer, and the Banner of Verminous Scurrying and Skaven Brew. Skaven Warlord with a Fellblade, who was an ass, and then a Warlock Engineer with a Shadow Magnet. Then 2 small units of 21 Clan Rats, specifically with a Rattling Gun, and then a sizable unit of Storm Vermin with the Banner of Grand Superiority, and then 2 Doom Wheels and a Hellpit Abomination. So, Owen Williams is part of Team Wales. He's a very good player. I really enjoyed playing against him, and I learnt a lot. And it was really nice to play Skaven, because I love Skaven. It is my army of choice if I knew how to play them. And now that I've seen other people playing Skaven, I think I might bring them out maybe in the future a bit more than I have been. But it was despite this, it was a 10-10 because of how Skaven are. Now, the reason why I didn't win this, and as you can see, the victory points are here at the bottom. I was ahead by just under 200 points, which means it's a 10-10. If I had scored 30 more points, I would have got 11-9 and I would have won that game. So it was very close and it was in my favour. Now, the reason why I was ahead is because I killed his baggage train, and I defeated all of his Clan Rats and all his Doom Wheels and his Hellpit Abomination. However, on his end, he killed my Knights, he killed my Dragon Ogres, both units. He killed... and then he killed my Sorcerer and my Warrior block. Did not kill my Dragon, which is a lot of points. Did not kill... I think he only killed 1 spawn. Maybe not. Maybe both of them are still alive. Either way, points haven't... Yeah, it was very close, effectively. And he didn't kill my baggage train, more importantly. So the reason why I didn't win, really, is because his Skaven Lord with Fellblade is I attack 4 times. If I hit, you will die, because it's strength 10, so it kills on 2s, and it ignores all armor saves whatsoever. So that is devastating. I didn't want my dragon to face that, so it didn't. It just mopped up everything else, but really not great. The other reason why that was scary and why I wasn't able to deal with it is because his Hellpit Abomination died in his turn 2. His Hellpit Abomination died to my spawn, which also died. And then when a Hellpit Abomination dies, you roll on a chart. On a 1 to 3, nothing happens. On a 4 to 5, you spawn a giant rats swarm, just one single base of giant rats. And then on a 6, it comes back to life. It didn't come back to life. It spawned a unit of giant rats, which spawned right next to my warriors and my sorcerer, my wizard bunker, if you will, and then it flanked my wizard bunker. Now, in Warhammer the Old World, if you are in combat, wizards cannot cast spells unless they target self, which means I couldn't cast my magic missiles, and unfortunately, because of demonology, could not cast a lot of spells. So it ended up me trying to kill this swarm. Unfortunately, because it's a flank attack, I can only attack with what's in the flank, which for me was only 2 people. And then, which means I can only do a maximum of 2 wounds, and the rat swarm had 5 wounds. So I got stuck there for 3 rounds. And yeah, it meant that his Skaven just was able to mop up everything, and then when they came to me, I just lost that, basically. So, end up in a draw because of that force. It wasn't... I could have played better, I guess, but it was also a dice, basically, a dice roll. If he hadn't rolled that 4 or 5, it would have been a very different outcome. But I had a really good time, and I learned a lot. And that was match 1. Match 2. So, coming into a draw, I went into a very difficult matchup with Vampire Counts against Adam Jones, who is part of Team England. At this point, I was like, oh god, I'm going to go and face off against everyone who is part of an actual professional team. Holy crap. So, this was a very, very tough battle for me. So, it's a Vampire Counts list. You've got a Master Necromancer on a Mortis Engine, level 4. And then a Necromancer Acolyte on a Mortis Engine, level 2. And then 2 Tomb Banshees. And then 2 Terrorgeists down here. Now, everything I've told you, that's 6 of these, all have the ability to scream, as explained at the start. Which means they choose someone within 8 inches. I need to take a leadership of -2. Anything I roll over my leadership is a wound taken at no saves whatsoever. In addition, he then had a White Lord, which he had put with his 29 Graveguard. And then he had 2 units of zombies, one of whom had a Standard Bearer, and 3 Fellbats. The game started off cagey-ish. I went first. I moved a little bit to try and get myself into a position. He went first. He went first, didn't want to move too close. So I moved up to make him force some decisions. He moved up a little bit, and then he screamed. In my first 3 screams. So first he screamed a Terrorgeist against my Knights. My Knights are leadership 8. So go down to 6. There are 5 of them. So if I roll an 11, they all die. I rolled a 12, so they all died. I was like, great. I then only had one thing on the flank. That was my spawn. I charged it into the Terrorgeist. We both killed each other. So that flank was completely lost for me. It allowed him to move stuff around. It was awful. In the middle, I had my Wizard Bunker. He screamed at it twice. I rolled an 11, and then I rolled a 12. So I lost 11 of my 16 dudes within turn 2. It all fell apart from there. There was no coming back. I didn't have anything that could move around to really help me in any way. And so he just absolutely decimated me. As you can see, 2,777 to 301. 310. The game was the Horseman Cometh, so it was deployment like so. There were 3 objectives this time, of which I didn't really score that many because of that. But the most importantly, the actual game rule was at the beginning of each turn, you roll a dice, randomly determine a terrain feature, and then when the Horsemen come out, they do D6, Strength 5, AP -2 hits. So I don't think it did that much. It took off a little bit of wounds here and there. Wasn't really the biggest battle. But yeah, so lost that one pretty comfortably. And that takes me into game 3, which I did win. I will go through, it was against Cathay. I will go through the thing. Gate to the Netherworld. So this had a summon elemental spirit template at the beginning in the center of the battlefield, and it scatters each player turn. And then this is what the deployment was, with 2 strategic locations and domination instead of baggage train. Domination is table quarters. If you have the most units, so if your unit strength is more than your opponent's, you score 100 at the end of the battle per table quarter. If it's even, it's 50 each. And then if no one's in there, you score 0. I played against Cathay, and this was the list against Jamie. I clicked the wrong button. The list is gone. I can't even show you the list. It's somewhere in there. Does he have his list here? He does. I could show you here. So, his list was a Gatekeeper who was the Battle Standard Bearer with a Jade Banner. Miao Ying, which is it's their named character who can cast spells and transform into a dragon. And then a Strategist in a Sky Lantern, which, if you remember from the limitations, you could only take 2. This individual was very honourable, only took 1. Then it was a unit of 30 Jade Warriors who were upgraded to Celestial Dragon Guard, which give them an extra weapon skill and a 6+ ward save. So they were effectively, with heavy armor and shields, they were 3 up, 6 up. That was their saves. And then they had a war banner, and the champion had a flame attack. It was interesting. 20 Jade Warriors, just 20 Jade Warriors, very standard. And then 10 Jade Lancers that started Ambusher. And then we had 2 cannons. One was a Cathayan Grand Cannon, and the other one was a Fire Rain Rocket Battery. So, I won this, as you can see. It was close-ish. It wasn't like a wipe. It wasn't a 19-1 or a 20-0. It was an 18-2. I won comfortably. Now, the reason I won comfortably is because when we deployed, I don't know if you can see my mouse at all, but when we deployed, there was a building here and a building here. So, and then he deployed his big block in the middle here, controlling this objective, and one over here. I deployed my big block here in the bottom, and then I deployed my dragon on this flank, and then he deployed his lantern over here. In his turn, he moved up very slightly. No, it would have been I went first. I moved up with my dragon over here because there was a cannon and his flank. So I moved up so that I could charge his flank or the cannon. He moved up his Celestial, his Sky Lantern over there. He shot his cannon at my dragon and took 4 wounds off it, so reduced me down to 5 wounds, and I was like, holy crap, help. I then charged the flank, which is where Miao Ying was, inside the unit, and I managed in 2 turns, so in 2 combats, so combat on my turn, I charge, combat on his turn, to kill Miao Ying, which was not a guarantee. She is very tough. And effectively that eliminated such a big board presence on the game that I was able to maintain everything. Now my opponent also didn't play great because his ambushing Jade Lancers, he deployed them in the bottom left corner down here, and then sort of just left them there to get 100 points of domination when I feel like they could have done a lot more damage if they had just been used to kill things. It was a win. Yeah, so that happened. It was a win. I'm not really going to complain any further than that. But it was a good game. My opponent was really, really nice. It was really interesting to learn how Cathay work and such. Now my game 4, I feel really bad about game 4. It was a 20-0 victory. Now game 4 had the Asylum, where effectively there's a special feature in the center right here. And then deployment was corners. We deployed on B1 and B2. And in the center of the deployment was a special feature. If you're within 6 inches of it with an eligible unit, you captured it. But at the end of every turn, you need to do a leadership check or fall back in good order from it, which is effectively it's a flee move, which then you reform. You don't flee forever. It's just a 1-turn flee. It did not come up at all. And this is why. So it was up against dwarves. Let me look at Andrew's list here. So we had Ungrim Ironfist, who's very strong. And then we had a Thane, Battle Standard Bearer, and a Rune Lord. And then we had 19 Longbeards, 2 lots of 12 Quarrelers, 20 Hammerers, 2 Doomseekers, and a Grudge Thrower. Now, one of the Doomseekers, this one I think ignores all armor saves, and this one is -2 to your armor save. On top of, I think, oh yeah, no, that'll be it. And then, yeah, they've got a bunch of other stuff. I don't really know dwarves all that much. The Hammerers had their Standard Bearer with the Rune of Hesitation and Rune Confusion, means that if they are charged up front, anyone charging them loses all charge bonuses. So you don't get your initiative bonus, you don't get any attack bonuses, impact hits, anything like that. It just doesn't happen if you charge the front of the Hammerers. So very scary unit. And the Longbeards were protected by the Thane and the Rune Lord, which gave them an extra AP on their attacks and the Battle Standard Bearer rerollable leaderships and such. So quite scary. So as I say, we deployed B1 and B2. I went first. I went around and effectively I just moved myself so that I was encompassing the circle. I controlled the special feature for 1 turn and then fled because I failed my leadership. And then he moved forward and he's playing dwarves, so he's quite slow. Then, turn 1 actually I rolled really good, and one of my spawn was able to get into one of his Doomseekers and kill it outright. I didn't kill it with my attacks, I killed it with my stomps, and that was fine. My turn 2 then I was able and wanted to, with my spawn and my Dragon Ogres, charge into his Longbeards, which we did. And then I killed a bunch. He did quite a few wounds, but in the end, in effect, he lost by 3. So he's leadership 10 normally with a Ungrim nearby. So he had to roll a 7. He failed his leadership. He gets to re-roll it. And he fails it again. Now, with the way Old World works, because his base leadership is 10 and his modified was 7, if you rolled a 2 to 7, he would go back 2 inches, we would continue combat. If you rolled a 7 to 10, he would fall back in good order, which meant he does 1 flee move, reforms, and I get to choose if I follow up, and if I do, I count as charging again. So pretty good. If you roll 11 or 12, you flee. And yeah. So his first fail was an 11, and then his second fail was a 12. So it meant that he fled. I caught him. So we lost all his Longbeards, his Rune Lord, and his Thane with the Battle Standard Bearer. Now, as you can see from his list, he doesn't have that many units. He's got 2 units of Quarrelers and 20 Hammerers, and that's it. He's already lost a Doomseeker. I, with my Wizard, in the meantime, shot down the other Doomseeker. And that meant only the Grudge Thrower and the 2 Quarrelers. So with the Quarrelers, when I went through, I chased down the Longbeards and to the Quarrelers, and the other Quarrelers were charged by my Dragon. So I think all of you can kind of figure out what happened there. Basically, I just ran through the entire army as soon as that happened. If he hadn't failed that leadership, or if he had just rolled a 10 or below, completely different outcome. Unfortunately, by turn 2, I had already won. And so at the end of the turn, I scored very, very high, 2725 to 825, because he had done my Chaos Spawn was left on 1 wound. So yeah, 20-0. Big impact there. What the hell have I just done? I'm back. So, and that left me to the final, which I lost, but hell of a game. Trick or Treat. It's 4 objectives. It's slightly hazard deployment zones. 4 objectives. When you score the objective, you roll a dice on a 1 or 2. You take D3 wounds. No saves allowed. My opponent, Truan, was playing Bretonnia. And he had a Duke on Pegasus with Virtue of Heroism. He had a Paladin. He had a Paladin with the Crusaders Tapestry. And then he had Lady Elise Duchard, which is a special character, and a Green Knight, which is the other special character for Bretonnia. And then he had 2 units of Knights Errants, which are just knights with Impetuous. But they already have Impetuous. And then 2 units of Squires, Unit 12, Unit 10. And then 5 Pegasus Knights. I didn't have a good game. I did not roll good. It's probably because of how bad my game 4 was against an opponent. Fates were like, hold on, let's not be too good here. So, the initial fight was fine. He had deployed his scouts ahead. I then moved slightly forward because I wanted to allow him to come towards me so that I could beat up his scouts and then move forward. That didn't happen. What actually happened is that I probably shouldn't have done this, but I shot some of his scouts with my Wizard. 3 of them died. It opened up a block where his knights could charge my Dragon Ogres. He did that. They all died. On the other side, that didn't happen. Instead, so it didn't happen on the right flank. On the left flank, charged his scouts, killed them all, overran, need to roll a 9 on 2 dice, rolled a 12. So that meant that my Dragon Ogres didn't reform, instead they just stood right there, their flank to his big unit of 11 knights, so they just got plowed through. So overall, not great. Second annoying thing that happened, on this right flank, I had my unit strength 10, but 5 Chaos Knights. They controlled the objective for 1 turn. I rolled a 2, and then I rolled a 6, which meant that 3 of them just died, which meant not only could they not hold objectives, they were now completely useless. Finally, and most frustratingly, my dragon moved up turn 1 to just be a threat. He did not engage. I then moved up turn 2 because my intention was to get my Dragon Ogres on one end so that I could take a charge and move through. Didn't happen that way. As I told you, they failed their leadership. So he was sat there, and then he charged it with his Virtue of Heroism Duke. Now, the Virtue of Heroism Duke is a very cool rule. Every single Bretonnia player has one Duke that just has it, because if it comes up, it's insane. A Virtue of Heroism gives the Duke Killing Blow, which means if you are an infantry character, if you're attacking an infantry character, or a cavalry character, so it's specifically not chariots, if you roll a 6 when wounding, it's an instant kill, no saves other than ward saves allowed, and then you die. You take all the wounds and you die. So quite strong. It also gives him, on top of Killing Blow, Monster Slayer, which is the exact same rule, except it works on monsters. So that includes my dragon. So you can see where this is going. We challenge. He challenges me, which I feel like is both a good and a bad thing. I personally don't feel like it was a good choice, but... we whiff. Both of us do nothing to each other. He doesn't kill me, I don't kill him. We don't do any wounds to each other, it's just a draw. Next turn, I strike at the same time as him. I hit him. I wound him twice, but he saves it. Because I choose not to use my great weapon, because he could kill me. And then he rolled 4 hits, and then he rolled 2 6s, and I was like, God damn. So I needed 2 saves. I need to do 5 ups because I have a 5 up ward. I don't get my 3 up save. I don't get my 5 up regen. Just my 5 up wards. Roll them both as a 1 out of 3 or something like that. So my 9 wound dragon just dies straight away. Upon seeing such a success, this Duke was like, I can take out anything else. So he turned around, did the same thing to the spawn the next turn, rolling a 6 to wound. And then on the last turn, goes into the last spawn, 6 to wound. Completely just crushing my hopes and my dreams. So it ended up being a bit closer than the previous game. But yeah, 2,600 for him, 438 for me. That includes 1 unit of scouts and a whole unit of knights. Because whilst that was going on, my spawn, before they got killed by the Duke, were eating up the knights. So yeah, that certainly happened, and what a game that was. But yeah, that's all of it. That's all the games. So I ended up on 50, as you can see. Very much a swingy turn. So from here to there, it felt very much like a swing, and then from here to there, huge swing the other way as well. But I'm pretty happy managing to get myself here at 38 with my 221 and my 50 points. I am joint with 3 other people, but it's based on performance. So apparently my wins were bigger than this person's wins because he got 2 draws and things. I could actually have a look. Yeah, these are my swings are way more swingy. So anyway, that's besides the point. Let me go back to my big screen. There we go. There's an explanation of how my tournament went. I really enjoyed myself. I did go with my friend Richard. He only made it to 1 day. That's not because he actually isn't even at the bottom. I can actually show you where he went. I'm sure he won't mind us. So if I go all the way to the bottom, there is in 76th. with 17 points, having played only 3 games. And as you can see, his Edward Ryan at -10. So that was, I think, -5 for unpainted models and -5 for taking too long on your turns. And this is another -5 for unpainted models. And he also only played 3 games anyway. But yeah, so in any case, yes, he had he has medical issues. He had a bad knee, and because he was standing up all day on the Saturday, it actually really hurt himself. So he wasn't able to make it to the Sunday, unfortunately. But he was on a pretty good streak. He did really well on his in his 3 games, and I'm very proud of what he achieved in 3 games only. And the person he faced in first, so his first game was against the person who ended up going 2nd overall in the whole tournament. So these things happen. But yeah, I had a really good time. I might consider doing it again next year. This was a much better experience than the experience I had when I went in Nottingham in May. And I don't know if that's just because there was a lot more players, or because the venue was better, or because I live literally 25 minutes from the venue, so I walked on Saturday. On Saturday, Richard came down and we drove together. But on Sunday, I just walked there and back, and I was home by 6 o'clock. It was great. But yeah, I had a really good time. It's made me appreciate the secondary objectives much more than I did before this tournament. And the only real frustrating thing, I think, is that there were so many vampire players. Like, I was lucky I only got 1, but my friend got 4 of them. Someone we met there, when it was 4 vampires and 1 Ogre Kingdoms that he faced, and and his favourite was against the Ogre Kingdoms, obviously, because there's an issue, like, when you face 1, that's fine, because you're like, okay, cool, but there were like at least 20 players out of the 79 playing vampires. The top 2 were vampire players. In the top 10, I think there were like 5 or 6 vampires, because they are in a very good position. Also, this tournament set, the extra rules, very much favoured vampire counts, just because of, when you do D3 wounds to a Chaos player or to a Bretonnia player who have knights that are like 20 plus points a model, versus when you do 3 wounds to a zombies, which are 2 points a model, very different outcome. And even if you do it against your Graveguard, which are like their main big buff infantry, they can just resurrect them. So but that's beside the point. Let's hope next year, if they do it again, it won't be vampire themed. It'll be something else, and it'll be a bit more interesting with that. Anyway, that was my tournament. Hope you guys enjoyed this very long update Monday, specifically tournament Monday. That's what I got to say. There might be an update Monday next week, or patch notes or whatever, as we move into November. Have a good one. Hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.